Hi all, I am Reshma KV, Assistant Professor of Computer Science Department from Jyoti Engineering College. The next topic is the categorization of the clustering method. So we have to discuss about the different clustering methods in the fifth and the sixth module. Mainly the three clustering methods are to be focused. So before that, we have to categorize what all the categorization in the clustering methods. So depending on the type of the data available as well as the application or the purpose of the method or purpose of the project is mainly we are choosing or choosing the clustering, which clustering algorithm is suitable for a particular purpose. So for that, it is generally categorized into 5 types: partitioning methods, hierarchical methods, density based method, grid based method, and model based method. In the fifth and sixth module, we have to focus on the partitioning method, hierarchical, and density based methods. Okay, so the partitioning method means the construction of the databases, or if we have a given a database and that database which contains the n tuples or data tuples or the n objects, which is partitioned or separated into k partitions or k groups, where each partition which is a cluster, which is considered as a cluster, and the k, the cluster group or the k which is less than the number of groups or the number of clusters which is less than or equal to n. So that is a condition which have to every cluster has to, or every partition should satisfy. Each partition should contain at least one object, and each object should belong to exactly one partition. Okay, each partition should contain at least one object. That means every group should contain at least one object. Okay, then the second condition is each object should belong to exactly one partition. That means that every object or every data tuple is belonging to one of the group or one of the cluster. Okay, so iterative relocation technique is used for the clustering method or partitioning method. It is used to improve the partitioning by moving the objects from one group to another. That means to improve the data quality, we are after doing the initial partition, we are doing the interactive relocation technique. That means that if the one object is placed in one group or one cluster group, after that it think that, or in the clustering algorithm working or the processing manner, the group is better than this group, the object is placed in another group. So we can change that location, or we can change the group in different groups from one group to another. Can move one group to another. It is known as an iterative relocation technique. Okay, so which is done in the partitioning method. For the good partitioning, the object in the same cluster are close or related, whereas the objects in the different cluster are far apart and it is very difficult, or very different, or it is unsimilar. It uses the partition methods uses the two methods, that is a k-means method and a k-methods method. K means that each cluster is represented by the mean value of the objects in the cluster. Taking the a cluster, then the object's mean value is considered as a k-means algorithm. In the k-methods, each cluster is represented by one of the object located near the center of the cluster, near the center of the centroid of the center of the cluster, which is known as a k-methods. These works are well in small to medium sized databases, and which forms the partitioning methods forms spherical shaped clusters. Okay, so the second type is the hierarchical method. Hierarchical method means a tree like structure. So it creates a decomposition of a given set of data objects. So it is two types are the agglomerative, and the second one is the divisive. So agglomerative approach or the bottom-up approach, we know that bottom-up means merging. So each object forms a separate group, successively merges the groups close to one another. It is based on the distance, okay, distance between the clusters. After that, the merging is stops until the termination condition means that if the termination condition holds, that means that the number of clusters, desired number of clusters is achieved, or any other termination condition is occurs, then the grouping or merging of that cells is stops. Okay, then the divisive approach means the top down approach. We know that it starts with all the objects in the same cluster, then separated with a splitting criteria or a splitting value. That means we are choosing a threshold value. Depending on that splitting value, they are separated into different clusters, and this clustering or this separating or the splitting should be stopped until a termination condition hold, or termination condition, that means that number of the desired clusters achieves. Okay, so one of the disadvantages by using this hierarchical method means that once a merge or a splitting is done, it cannot be undo. That means we cannot undo that particular step. So because of this reason, it cannot correct the error decisions. We cannot correct the error decisions. So one of the main advantage of the hierarchical method is the less computation of the cost. Once the splitting or the merging is done, it is done. No more error clarification or updation is required. So less computational cost. And one more advantage means if both these approaches is combined, that means agglomerative and divisive method is combined, it gives more advantage. Okay, clustering method with the integrated approach are Birch and Cure algorithms, and it is used to improve the quality. Okay, and the third one is the density based method. Here the density based method, before that the two methods, the partitioning method as well as the hierarchical methods, is based on the distance. Okay, distance between the objects. So it produces the spherical shaped clusters. So to discover the clusters of the arbitrary shape, the clustering should be based on a particular density. Density means the number of objects or the data points. Number of objects or the data points, which is known as the density. That is, for each data point within a given cluster, the neighborhood of a given radius has to contain at least a minimum number of points. Okay, every data point in a given cluster, then the neighbor should have there should be a number of a given radius, and has to contain at least a minimum number of data points have to be occur. This is the density. Okay, so to discover then arbitrary shape, as well as it is used to filter out the outlier noise. Outliers noise or the out of noise, and while the continue growing a cluster so long as the density in the neighborhood exceeds some threshold value. That means the cluster should be just growing or developing as well, but the density or the continuity or the growing up is maintains or until the termination condition holds or exceeds some termination condition. In the uses the two algorithm, that is DB scan and optics. And the fourth one is the grid based method. That means it divides the object space into finite number of cells to form a grid structure. Here the data points, instead of the data points or the data tuples, we are forming the object space into finite number of cells to form a grid structure. So it performs the cluster operation on the grid structure. The main advantage is that it is a fast processing time, because the independent on the number of data objects and dependent on the number of cells in the data grid. As you clear about that, grid based method dividing the object space into different cells or the finite number of cells. So because of this reason, the performation or the processing is done in the cells or the grid structure. So it is a fast processing time, because independent of the data objects, depending on the number of cells. The main algorithm is a string algorithm, and click and the wave cluster is a advanced one which uses the grid based and the density based clustering algorithm. And the fifth one is the model based method. It is a hypothesis, a model for each of the cluster, and finds a best fit of the data to the model. That means by hypothesizing the models, the data objects, which model is the best fit to the particular data model, that one is the that chooses the algorithm. So forms the cluster by constructing a density function. So clustering is done, or clustering should be done by the density function that reflects the spatial distribution of the data points, and which uses the best or the best fit algorithm. The other algorithms is taken for that processing, and it is a robust clustering method, and it detects the noise and outliers. This is the main categorization of the clustering method. Next videos we cover different clustering methods. The main clustering methods we have to focus is the partitioning method. In the fifth module, the partitioning method is covering. In the sixth module, the hierarchical and the density based methods are covered. So I completing the categorization of clustering methods. Then the next video onwards, the different clustering methods will be explained. Okay, thank you.